The Pokemon games have been around for quite some time, way before the times of looking up every answer online or even Google AI. This led to many unanswered questions in the Generation 1 games, that are also known to be broken in many ways. Naturally, this combination caused numerous amount of myths to arise thanks to human imagination. Thus, many unexplainable things that ended up being chalked up on the school playground. But today, we'll uncover the true explanations to 10 myths in the Generation 1 Pokemon games, using glitches. And there is no better place to start than probably the most infamous myth on this list. And you might have guessed it, that's Mew being under the truck. To gain access to the area with the truck, a save/reset surfing glitch will be used, which allows the player to surf down after reloading the save file. Once getting to the truck, we'll see that Mew is indeed not under the truck. No amount of HM use or beating the Elite Four a certain amount of times will cause Mew to spawn. I'm convinced this rumor was started to troll people so they beat the Elite Four 100 times. Can't say I did this myself, but I'm sure somebody out there did. Nowhere in the game code does it indicate Mew being under the truck, sadly. However, it is possible to encounter Mew with a very simple glitch. This glitch is even named after Mew, the Mew glitch. In case you're not familiar with how to get a Mew with the Mew glitch, I'll link a video in the description showing the simplest way to get a level 100 Mew. Instead of wasting your time using strength a billion times at that darn forsaken truck, because you'll see here, this method actually works. But for now, it is time for the next myth, over on Route 25, and this is Bill's Secret Garden, which is said to be behind Bill's Sea Cottage, and it totally seems reasonable there might be a secret area behind Bill's cottage. However, using walkthrough walls, we can see that it's just this little small area with no use other than decoration. We can also briefly see the edge of this area when walking into Bill's cottage. Using the same method from earlier for getting to the area with the truck, we can surf into this section of Route 25 that looks unfinished due to the edges. That is because they didn't expect anyone to see this area, so it wasn't polished around the edges. No pun intended. This is also the case behind Bill's cottage, and this actually leads nicely into the next myth because it was also said that there are Pokégods behind Bill's house. That is not the case, but there is also said that there are Pokégods existed elsewhere in the games. They do not. But Pokégod-like Pokemon do exist on certain coasts of the game. Due to the left-facing shore tile glitch, in the English versions of Red and Blue can cause the player to encounter Pokemon over level 100 and glitch Pokemon on certain shore tiles or coasts in the game. Like the most well-known one, the east coast of Cinnabar Island. These Pokemon aren't exactly Pokégods, but they might as well be. However, it was theorized that these Pokemon could cause harm to the save file. While this isn't the case for the English versions, Pokemon like Missingno and the other language versions have been accused of deleting save data. However, there is no evidence that Missingno deletes save data, which leads nicely into the next myth of Missingno is dangerous and deletes your game data. Missingno and other glitch Pokemon are known to corrupt the Hall of Fame and have the ability to invert or flip the sprites in battle. But these are both either reversible and or preventable in theory. Thus essentially making Missingno harmless in Pokemon Red and Blue. However, in Pokemon Yellow, Missingno can crash the game and produce relatively eerie cries in battle, but it still doesn't touch the save data. The reason why Missingno might potentially get a bad rap is because there are some glitches that are dangerous to the save file and might have Missingno present. People will likely remember they saw a weird Pokemon called Missingno, and the next thing they knew, their save data was gone. As you could imagine, they'd blame Missingno. A good example of a dangerous glitch is Super Glitch, which usually involves giving Missingno or Pokemon like Missingno, but does a lot more in the background, which usually is what results in the save file deletion or destruction, which goes unnoticed. Same goes for the dead battery for a cartridge. Eventually the game cartridge craps out and may no longer keep the save data. Perhaps when people caught a Missingno or encountered a Missingno, their game battery gave out shortly after and caused save file deletion in that way. Either way, the evidence suggests that Missingno is not a danger to the save data. This seems to be a common example of something being attributed to being bad due to relation to bad circumstances, despite actually being beneficial with minimal drawbacks. The biggest one potentially being the Hall of Fame corruption, caused by Missingno and other glitched Pokemon, which I mentioned earlier can be preventable, seemingly unlike Super Glitch when it decides to nuke your save file data. And this next myth actually has some relation to the Hall of Fame, and that is the Catch Professor Oak myth. Professor Oak is well known in the Pokemon series for good reason. It's even theorized that he was the original final battle in the Gen 1 games, as his trainer sprite exists with different loadouts available, a handful of them even having final evolutions of the starters, and a similar team to Champion Blue. However, he cannot be caught, and he can be battled using the Mew glitch, which is probably the reason why this myth even became a thing, despite not being catchable. But still remains as a memorable secret fight available in the Gen 1 games. The next myth takes place on a very memorable route, Route 1, which is not surprising given the name of the myth, the Route 1 grass to the west. On this route, there is grass to the east and west, and there have been many questions and theories about what lurks within. It cannot be entered normally, however, it is possible with the use of walk-through walls. This also has the side effect of what's called the Phantom City glitch, but this grass was said to be the home to Pokégods and glitch Pokémon, probably even Mew as well. This is not the case, and it's just the same grass that is normally accessible, but outside the map boundary. As you'll see here, without using the Phantom City glitch exploit, the game will just crash this time. Relatively uneventful, but untrue nonetheless. The ghost in Lavender Town is catchable. Now with this myth, things get interesting. We should all be well aware that the ghost resides at the 6th floor of the Pokémon Tower. Turns out to be a Marowak, but is not catchable during normal gameplay. This is also the case for wild ghosts that are encountered without the Silphoscope. With a little exploit, we can see the ghost is actually a Cubone, but still isn't catchable. And this is where the fun begins. Using the Mew glitch, with a special stat of 145, we can encounter a Marowak. However, since this encounter with the Marowak is considered a legendary or special encounter, it is treated like the one found on the 6th floor of the Pokémon Tower. However, there is a huge difference. This one is catchable. Now that makes it seem like the ghost is catchable like the myth implies. However, this is technically a Marowak, just an oversight that makes it seem like the mysterious ghost encounter, which is probably where this myth came from in the first place. Somebody caught the ghost Marowak via the Mew glitch and said the ghost from Pokémon Tower is catchable. That is not true, unfortunately. This is also possible in Pokémon Yellow, and all 3 games also have the ability to produce the ghost form of Missingno at special stat 184. This next glitch is exclusive to Pokémon Red and Blue versions, and I presume that this myth does as well. This myth is the evolution stones can evolve any Pokémon. With the use of an odd exploit, it is possible for evolutionary stone Pokémon to evolve under certain conditions without their said stone. This is different than the myth, as it states evolutionary stones can evolve any Pokémon, but that is untrue. This is all based around that each Pokémon in the game corresponds to an item equivalent to their index number. When a Pokémon like Onix shares an index number with an evolutionary stone like the Water Stone, after completing a trainer battle with this evolution stone Pokémon, if a Pokémon that evolves via evolutionary stone gained a level during the battle, it will begin to evolve as if an evolutionary stone was used. It's odd this even became a myth, because it should have been obvious only Pokémon that evolved via stone were the ones evolving. But what is interesting is that many of the glitched Pokémon in these games can evolve from random items that would correspond to their evolutionary stone. For example, there is a glitched Pokémon hexadecimal C9 that evolves via card key exposure into another glitch Pokémon called C, hexadecimal E5. How cool is that? And credit to the Glitch City Wiki. This myth actually opens the door for the next one. There are more than 151 Pokémon. Now what's interesting is that this myth isn't technically wrong. There were officially 190 Pocket Monsters, aka Pokémon, planned in Gen 1, but 39 of them were cut before the games were released. And in the English versions of Red and Blue Yellow, there are 39 different Missingnos present. Perfect fit for the missing Pokémon from the original plan. Once more, there are technically 256 Pokémon available in the Gen 1 games. However, 105 of these Pokémon are classified as glitch Pokémon and were not intended to be in the game. Officially, there are 151 intentional Pokémon in Generation 1. However, the lasting effect of glitches in Gen 1 have a huge impact on the number of Pokémon available and thus proving this myth to be true? I suppose it depends on how you look at it. Truthfully, I think the glitches and glitch Pokémon have made the Gen 1 games absolutely delightful, with seemingly endless content. Let me know what you guys think. I'd also like to point out that this expanded Pokédex ends weirdly at 216, such an unusual number to end on given the information mentioned earlier. Pikablu. And finally, Pikablu was a Pokemon that looked similar to Pikachu but had a blue color. Many people saw this combination and the name Pikablu became widely used. It was rumored to be the secret water evolution for Pikachu, perhaps for the ones that knew surf. As in Pokemon Yellow, there was a surfing minigame based around surfing Pikachus, and that Pikachu cannot evolve normally in Pokemon Yellow, as it refuses a Thunderstone. These little factors supported the idea that the mysterious Pikablu. However, in reality, this Pokemon was actually an unreleased Pokemon in the late 90s, Meryl, at least until Pokemon Gold and Silver were released. This just goes to show the power of information, untrue, rumor, or not, has the ability to alter our reality. Many of you have heard most, if not all, of these myths firsthand, possibly believing them at some point, as I could say for myself. Even despite knowing they ended up being untrue in some way, hopefully this video helped clarify why these events occurred, and what glitch was most likely responsible for creating them in the first place. My name is Franzboy, and I want to thank you guys for watching. And if you are interested in seeing other glitches of Generation 1, check out this playlist here. And the same goes for this playlist of Generation 2. That is going to conclude this video, so once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.